Thank you. This meeting is called back to order at 6:41 p.m. We'll get back to our regular session. At this point, it's recommended that the board approve the consent agenda. So we have a motion and a second that the board approve the consent agenda, including the approval of the minutes from January 25th, 2022, as submitted, the acceptance of the recommendations from the Committee on Special Education, the acceptance of the recommendations from the Committee on Preschool Special Education, the acceptance of the recommendations from the Superintendent for personnel changes, and the approval of requests to dispose of unused service textbooks.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We have the Treasurer's Report. It's recommended that the Treasurer's Report, including the cash report, General Fund cash report, the General Fund revenue status report, the General Fund budget status report, the School Lunch Fund cash report, and School Lunch Fund revenue and expense budget report for the month ending December 31st, 2021 be approved. So I have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We have no special reports, which brings us directly to our student representative, Lila Harvey. Ms. Harvey.
Hello, just to start off with a couple of district-wide updates. So February is Black History Month, and all of our schools are taking the time to learn about Black history and achievements. The 51st annual jazz fundraiser was this past Friday and Saturday night. It featured performances from Bay Trail Jazz Ensembles and the Jazz Choir, as well as the PHS Jazz Ensemble, Jazz Choir, Trombone Ensemble, and the Studio Orchestra. These performances featured trombonist Michael Dees. At PHS, the third term has now started. Sophomores shared personal symbols during their restorative circles in their English classes. The robotics team was a finalist Alliance captain at the New York Excelsior Albany area qualifier and won second place in the Design and Think Awards. Science Olympiad had its competition last Saturday at St. John Fisher with 30 students competing. Sources of Strength is starting a new campaign titled We Belong. Student Council recently sponsored a drive collecting toiletries, non-perishables, and cleaning products for the neighborhood of Pines of Parrington that recently experienced a destructive fire. The Penfield dance team has been restarted and is performing at both the boys and girls basketball games during halftime. The hockey team recently had its senior night and won divisional champs with 15 wins, 1 tie, and 1 loss. The girls basketball team has a game tonight against Gates, and varsity cheer won first in their division. At Bay Trail, JV cheer won first place and grand champs, and modified cheer also came in first place at their last competition of the season. At the elementary schools, starting with Indian Landing, Mrs. Kaiser's class learned about Ella Fitzgerald and her contributions to jazz, and students in grades K through 5 had fun at a virtual hip-hop dance party. At Scribner, first graders are learning how to participate in restorative circles to practice community building and how to share with others. At Harris Hill, fourth graders learned about the history of longhouses and played the beaver trading game with Perry Ground from the Onondaga Nation. Third graders are reading different books and discussing them with each other in mini book clubs. And finally at Cobbles, taking advantage of the recent snow, the Cobbles PTA and students built snowmen together at recess. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any questions or comments for Lila? All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Which brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Putnam.
I'd like to just once again say that I think it would be better if Lila goes after me because she does such a great job presenting. Really got to step my game up, but it was awesome. Listening to most of it I know, and then there's other things I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. So it's nice, I think, for the board and then the full community to be able to hear all of those things that are happening here in Penfield. So thank you. For superintendent reports, I do have a couple of student and staff honors, some brief updates, really around COVID, and then we have our school calendar for next school year that will be up for the board to adopt tonight. And then I will turn it to Dr. Driffel for business updates, and as we prepare and continue to plan for our budget for next year. And we do have a special guest of Mr. Mike Galla in the audience for our Director of Transportation, because part of tonight's presentation is around the transportation budget. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Maloney for an update on universal pre-K and where we are in that process. So, as mentioned by Ms. Harvey, it is Black History Month. We're committed here to embracing and celebrating all cultures and social identity groups throughout the school year. This month, all Penfield schools are celebrating and learning about Black History Month through readings, discussions, art, poetry, dance, music, and more. Lots of information is available on our website, right under the news story on the main page. You can click and learn more. And just, it's one of those places where, as we look at culture and bringing to Penfield, you know, ideally it's a perfect world as everything's infused in what we learn, and there doesn't have to be a month for any group. But we're not there yet. And so what we're doing, and I thank Tasha Potter, who's on, and through the Office of Access and Equity, are sending an email once a month to really celebrate the culture and peoples that are connected to the federal month recognition. And so that started this month, but will continue for every month in the school year. And a lot of great stuff goes into that. So again, encourage our entire community to go to the webpage and take a look at some of the great things our schools are doing. It is also National School Counseling Week, and it is being celebrated the week of February 7th to 11th, 7th to 11th February, to honor the unique contribution of school counselors and to highlight the tremendous impact they have in helping students achieve social, emotional well-being and academic success. I can't say enough about our school counselors K-12. I also really, we talk a lot about mental health teams, so not just our counselors, but our psychologists and our social workers. But that unique role they play in connecting with students and also being a bridge to families and the school is just incredible. So I can't say thank you enough on behalf of the district to all of our counselors throughout our school district. We do have students selected for all county festivals. I will not read all the names, but congratulations to all the students here, and they are in your agenda, who have been selected to participate in the All County Music Festival next month in March. That is up for my positives. I think I'm just going to start having Ms. Harvey do all of the kudos, because you do a great job. And just here now, we've got regular updates for COVID-19. And just we continue to update our information page. And this is good news, finally. We're always looking for good news, is that our active cases since January 5th, which was, we post these every Wednesday on the webpage just to keep our community informed. And you can see really where they talk about Omicron and the sort of the surge we saw right after break. It makes sense that on January 19th, about 2 weeks in, a little over 2 weeks in January, right after break, we really hit 142 active cases. So that's students and staff across the district. And then it went down, and this past Wednesday on the 2nd, we were down to 41 active cases. And this is really aligned with Monroe County data in terms of seeing less positives of COVID. And lots of information on all things COVID can be found on our webpage. You just click the COVID-19 information link. It's on the top of the homepage. Along with this, there's always been maybe, I don't know if it's confusion, but just sort of muddy waters of what K-12 mask mandates are, who makes a decision, what does it look like. Last board meeting, I sort of gave a timeline based on the lower court sort of striking down the mask mandate, and then the appellate court, and now there's a stay that goes through the first couple days of March. But where we are now is that, as of today, New York State mask mandate for PK schools, PK-12 schools, so pre-kindergarten through 12. So us, it's really K-12 schools. This is a New York mask mandate. We cannot go against it as a public school district. Actually, all school districts fall under this. The New York State mandate expires on February 21st, and so that is, I think, the first Monday of February break. So this mask mandate does remain in place for Penfield until the mask mandate expires on February 21st, or New York State may provide a new end date for PK-12 mask mandate. So there is discussion, and the governors talked about a conference tomorrow and or Thursday that it might extend past February 21st. But also that if it does go past February 21st and there's the possibility that the appeals court may determine it can't continue. So those are the three reasons when this mask mandate will end from New York State's point of view. So if the New York State mask mandate for schools does expire or ends, we believe from our legal counsel and discussion is that it would become a local decision. I will share with you that in speaking with the Monroe County, the Monroe County Department of Health, there is no plans to have a county-wide mask mandate. So if it ends with the state, it would fall on the local areas, which would be for us, school district. So we have, and the community knows, we put surveys out. They went out Monday to families, to staff, and to our secondary students. That's 6th through 12th grade because they do have access and utilize their emails. We didn't give the survey to K-5 because they're not bringing their laptops home right now. They don't have that ready available access to their email to see the survey. And the surveys, we put this in all the emails, the surveys are not a vote. We're not voting on what to do with masks, but it is a piece of data the district is going to consider if and when masking becomes a local decision. And so we'll share as a district all of that by the end of next week once we get all the data in and take a look at it. I think it'll be interesting to see. So just additional information. The COVID virus is not yet considered an endemic, but medical experts expect that it eventually will become endemic. So really it's like the flu is an endemic, and we learn to live with the reality of it. And it's talking with the Monroe County Department of Health, looking at what the CDC is putting out. New York State Department of Health has, again, at 8 p.m. on last Friday, tweaked a little bit their rules for isolation. We realize that we have to shift the narrative, and I can't do that alone as a superintendent, but we do as a nation, as a community, have to begin to start talking about shifting the narrative from this is a pandemic to we are going to see COVID forever, potentially. And, you know, I'm not a medical doctor, but in terms of reading, it's something that will probably surge and come back and similar to the flu, and that's out there. So as a school community, we really have to start preparing to view COVID-19 as an endemic rather than a pandemic. What does that look like is really our question for us. COVID-19 cases are on a downward trend in Monroe County. This is information from our Monroe County Department of Health. I met with them earlier today. Our hospitalization rates are low. You know, people are still dying from COVID. It's not disappeared. It's still there, but in where we were a year ago versus even where we were at the end of December, things are heading to a better positive view in terms of our rates. Omicron symptoms tend to be milder, according to the Department of Health, especially in vaccinated individuals. Now, again, I want to be really clear, it doesn't mean everybody gets a mild case if they get Omicron. There are people who get very sick. There are people who are still hospitalized. But as we look at a whole, it is different than where we were 2 years ago. And then I don't have specific data, but I want to share that we do get an update occasionally from the Monroe County Department of Health around Penfield Central school-aged vaccination rate. So the number we get is for the people who live within the Penfield Central School District area, but it doesn't mean just our students. So there are students who live in Penfield but may attend a private school. That vaccination rate would still be in this number. But we're at about, the last I got was beginning of January, and it's about 82%, which I think is a good sign. So about 82% on average of our students, K-12, have been vaccinated. And so, you know, again, we've as a district have always taken the stance that we are not going to advocate for vaccines. That's a family decision. We're not advocating for people to do that. We're not doing vaccines in school. We have offered a site that parents have to sign up on. Parents have to be there. But we're working through and making those options, but it's not a district stance. However, I think it's important data to have as we look at how do we move forward. So next steps is, I think, a pause and a reminder that when we can go back to August and reopening school after the high school was virtual and every other day. At the end of last year, we were able to get K-5 back every day. Then we were able to get middle school back every day. We couldn't get the high school back because we couldn't cohort them based on the rules then. But as a reminder, our priority going into this year, one of our top priorities was to keep our schools in classrooms open for full-time in-person instruction, because we know that that's what our students need. Research supports that. Of course, in-person learning is going to trump online learning any day of the week. And so we're getting there. We're more than halfway through the school year. We've been open. We haven't had to shut down for COVID. Snow, yes. COVID, no. And that's just a reminder. But as we look at next steps, masks are going to continue to be required in our buildings until further guidance from New York State. As I said a couple slides ago, that would be either the end of the mandate, or the mandate gets overturned, or the governor gives a new extended mandate with a off-ramp, which is how do you ease out of masking. So our survey results we're collecting is one piece of data. We're going to share that again out next week. And then we'll continue to share updates with our community via email and on our webpage. I want to just mention that what's interesting is that I know there are people, like the mask piece is, I'm just speaking from the heart right now for a moment. When I got into education, there's two things I never talked about. I don't talk politics, and I don't talk religion. I taught history, and I loved it because at the end of the year, the kids would guess what religion I was and what political party I was aligned to. They never got it right, all right? Because I don't do that. It's more of like trying to help kids understand where they are, and that's our goal as educators. I've added over the last 2 years vaccines, COVID, and masking. Like, these are things that people have very strong opinions. And I really will stand here and say, I don't think there's a wrong or a right answer. There's a lot of very unique situations. There's family dynamics, there's situations. Everybody has dealt with something differently. They may have seen somebody impacted by the vaccine in a negative way. They might have somebody at home who does not have an immune system because they're going through treatment for cancer. They're every single gamut here. And so again, as a district, as a superintendent, I'm not a medical expert. Our job is to follow the rules, try to understand, and do best by our community. If masks were to become optional, they'll always be optional. It's not a mask or not mask. They'll always be optional. Somebody asked me today, well, you did the survey, so once the survey results come out, you will follow those. And I said, no, the mask mandate in New York State is still in place. So even if our surveys came back 100% wanted optional, we can't change that until New York State mask mandate expires or changes. So it's just data to have and look and listen. We didn't do a survey like this in September because there was a mask mandate. There was no chance. Now we're starting to see this off-ramp of how do we get back to some form of normal. But again, we have people in this community, just like we have in the nation and the world, that feel very strongly that masks must continue and very strongly that masks must end, and then all the different subsets in between. And you know, depending on the day, I probably fall everywhere on that spectrum. So our job is to really listen, follow the state mandates, as much as that sometimes upsets people. But I want to be really fair, is that even if tomorrow the mask mandate went away, there's still New York State rules in place that we have to abide by. So as of now, if those rules don't change, every time a student has a COVID-type symptom, they need to leave school and get a PCR test or a lab antigen test. So that's difficult. If right now the state is not quarantining people, they're really shifting back to families making decisions, people doing the right thing. And so, you know, those rules are about having to get a PCR test. And the other rule right now is if you had to isolate for COVID for 5 days, you need to wear a mask for the next 5 days. Well, if masking is optional, the school district cannot manage who's supposed to wear a mask and who isn't. That's not a fight the school wants to get into with families or the students, and at the end of the day, we simply can't manage it. We do not have the means to determine who's supposed to wear one or not. And so, really what we are advocating, and a letter went out from Superintendent Monroe County, it'll be on our webpage tomorrow, really asking the governor for that exit strategy. We've been asking for 2 years, and now that we're hearing that things might really change with the mask mandate, we want to know what are the steps. Are you going to change the other rules? Are you going to change the isolation guidance? Are you going to change that students need to get a test if they have a symptom? Because all of those things don't go away if masks come off right now. And so we're really asking for, please don't tell us at midnight that tomorrow there's no mask. Give us some time. So again, the date right now is February 21st, which does happen to fall in February break. So we'll know more, we'll share more as that information comes out. And then the other piece I'll just add too, as one of those other caveats to the what ifs, is right now there's masking on buses. And is that because of SED, the governor, or because the Department of Transportation also has a masking requirement for public transportation? So that's the question that just came up today, that we're determining, do we need to still mask on buses if it's optional in school? And so those are the pieces we have to work through. We really need that guidance from New York State.
Yeah.
And again, I just asked for patience. I asked for civility on all sides, that we all are trying to work through this, and we know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We do know that they learn more and more about COVID every day, and we do learn that currently we're on a downtrend and things look good. And so I just again ask for our community to take a deep breath, know that we're going to have to follow the rules in New York State, and we're going to work through any new change that comes, because we are Penfield. Our kids are amazing. They are doing amazing things, but ideally our goal in the beginning is to stay in school full-time every day in person. I'm done with COVID. Can I please be done giving COVID updates? That is when I will return to normal, when I can not have COVID updates. But I'll, board, if you have any questions around that.
Thank you. Board members. Kristen.
I'm sorry, I do have a question. So I know currently, part of the reason why, as a school district, we have to follow New York State rules is because of our insurance. Do we know if the mask mandate goes away, what our insurance company would require us to do?
First of all, never apologize. It's a great question.
Well, I know, but it's COVID and you asked to be done. So.
No, I just don't know. It was really about just having I just remember the day where I didn't have to do an update about COVID,
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
So, but it's a great question, because I also had that question, which is why it's a great question. So I did check with Dr. Driffel. He checked with our insurance company. They haven't updated their sort of their guidance. So they basically say you've got to follow the mandates. There's some soft language around you need to follow guidance, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got to follow guidance from the state and from your local DOH. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's lockstep that like the insurance would become an issue if the mandate's not there.
Okay.
But right now, that is a huge piece that we talked about last year, is that if we just said, okay, there's certain things in life that I'd like to think I'm a rebel. My kids don't look at me as a rebel. But there's sometimes I'll be like, I don't agree with that rule, and I'm not going to do it. But as a human, I can do those things. As an individual, it's easy. As a school district, any of those decisions, I got to make sure that the school district follows the rules, because the last thing we want is, if we just say tomorrow, forget New York State's mandate, we're doing what we want, if there were to be anything of an issue and a lawsuit, our insurance is pretty clear that they're going to say, we're not covering you.
Right.
And the example I always use, which is why it's a good question, is like that fence around your pool. You have to have a fence around your pool. If you have a pool and you get insurance, they're going to ask you, do you have a fence around it? And if for some reason you don't like that fence, you just want freedom and you want to get rid of the fence, and gosh forbid something happens in that pool, your insurance company is going to say, we're not covering you for losses, we're not covering you for lawsuits. And that's a given. If you have a pool, you got to have a fence. And that's how I look at it with COVID, is if there's or anything, if there's a mandate from the state or a state law, we do have to follow it. Somebody asked me, can we now make a policy in Penfield that says no masking? And the answer is no, but it's a great, I think, answer as you learn about school board and how a school board, what the role of school board is. The school board can always make a policy that goes further than the law, but you can't make a policy that goes less than the law. So the answer is, until the mandate changes, sorry, that was my long answer and I went off, but right now the insurance is a bit, we did ask that question, they have not changed their recommendation or guidance since August. So it's possible the insurance companies could shift, but I don't see that happening based on if there's no New York State mask mandate from our governor from New York State.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Lisa?
I don't know what this is. It's sort of a question. So when we first went down this road, we had like this big document from State Ed and this big document from the Department of Health and the one from the governor, and then you all got together all summer and we all tried to figure out what we had to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where's this going? I mean, do you think we're getting to a point where, so if there's no mandate from the governor, is SED going to try to trump that, and how does the court play in? Or do we think this is moving, like what you said, from this pandemic to this sort of we're living with this and these sort of regulations are going to go away? Or
Lisa, I'm really glad you asked that question because I wish it could be like a clear answer. And we don't really get clear answers.
Right.
I'm gonna be fair. Like, it's not because if someone emails me, and people have emailed me, like, if the state ends their mandate, then who's in charge to make the decision? And it's not a really easy answer because SED has come out and said they want masking. If that big document you talk about ended up turning into a very lengthy reopening document that all schools in New York State had to submit to SED and get approved before they could open school this past September. And so we got that approved, and so that document's still there, and we're running sort of in this place of that's what got us to reopen, so doesn't that stand? The question really is like, how much power does New York State Education Department have if the mandate goes away? Mm-hmm. And the answer is that's why it's going to fall on local decision. It could happen that this week something comes out and says this is the impact if you don't follow that reopening plan. Being very honest, I don't think SED is going to do that. I think our legislator has had time to vote masking in. They haven't done that. I think it has become nobody really wants to take a stand one way or the other. And I can't argue because from the beginning of time as a superintendent, we have argued for local control. We want local control for lots of things. We want the district to be able to make decisions and not have the state tell us everything we have to do. But the answer really is right now, if it's not the legal mask mandate, the question is then what's the legality of a district to have a policy above and beyond or to not? And that's why we really need that guidance from the state very clearly on how that looks. SED many times will give recommendations, but not necessarily a mandate in regards to something like this. It's not a required policy to have, right? The SED will give us required policies we need to have. This is not a required policy. But I do think we're at this point where there is sort of like what we've been asking for, an exit ramp, an exit strategy. How do we get back to normal? We've really been asking for, like, can we make this clear? It sounds like, as of now, the state, and it could change, is not saying, here are the metrics. And if these metrics are hit, then you can remove masks. And we were asking for that a year and a half ago, saying, can you help us, tell us, here were the metrics to go virtual. Remember they said if you hit this percentage rate, then you had to close. Well, we've always been saying, well, tell us the flip side. Like, we're positive thinkers. Like, you know, we know what we have to do, but like, how do we get back on? How do we get there? If you're a kid and you're struggling and you're failing your social studies class, then you want the teacher to say, these are the steps you need to pass. And we need the state to say, these are the steps to make it clear for our community, for our students, teachers, and for us to make informed decisions. We don't have that, which is, you know, it's frustrating. And I know that our community is frustrated on both ends of the spectrum and all throughout and want clear answers that we as a district and board can't provide because there is no clear path. Does that sort of answer your question, though?
it does, sort of.
That's what we're still
Right,
struggling with
yeah.
right now, but I think where we stand is that if there's no mask mandate, it would fall on the board to have to create a policy for masking. And that's a tough thing to do, because I can speak for me, I'm not a medical expert. I read and I listen, but there's a lot out there, and we know that it's also emotionally charged for many people on all sides of the debate.
Catherine?
No.
You good?
I think we've covered it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to say, I think, again, you can, from what Tom said, from the questions, the main thing is, from the beginning, and the guidance has been variable. It's not always been clear. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure it out. And I think looking forward, we can say that this could easily happen again. I'm not saying nothing's getting worse, but guidance is changing in a way that's not immediate obvious. So the first thing to do is, if you're not sure, look to the district website, because we will be trying to figure it out. Tom and the staff will be trying to figure it out, what that guidance says, what it means, and we will implement it. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of calmness and a little bit of patience to wait a day or two while we get a good handle on it and we figure out what it means and what we have to do to implement it. It doesn't necessarily mean something changes immediately the next day. So again, they are working on it. They jump on this as quickly as they can. I know Tom does, I know everyone else does, but sometimes it takes just a little bit of time to follow back up with the state, SED, Department of Health, the county, and figure out, well, what did you mean by this, or what does this mean? And sometimes it takes a day or two. So
Yeah.
we will get there, but we need to be careful about how we go, just to make sure that we are compliant, and to make sure we don't have to back ourselves, go somewhere and then walk it back.
Mark, I think that's really important. We looked at this, is that, like, if you can remember way back, there was a time in this 2 years where there was a thought that masks were optional. A number of districts around us went optional. And then we waited a day, and it was, they're not optional. So they had to backtrack and say, and I think, I got 3 kids. I think that's tough to say, which way is it? And so it is about that patience. I know it's tough. On one end, people are done, and on the other end, people are really worried. And at the end of the day, we'll do everything we can to make sure that if and when we go optional, that families and students have, the support they need to continue with masking and work through that. We just need the time to work through whatever change could be coming. And we live in a world where, we just want that answer immediately. And trust me, I've Googled like every night, and you're not going to get a clear answer from Google right now on this one.
No, Facebook. You need to get that clear answer right away from Facebook.
Try to avoid Facebook, but there's a lot out there, and it's tough because every state's different and every county's different. But right now, it's still in New York State a mask mandate for K-12. I think as far as that information is so wild, because on Thursday the 10th, that is when the state mandate for businesses could expire. So it's possible that doesn't continue, but the schools again go until the 21st.
Yeah. Mark?
Yes.
I have kind of like a comment which could lead to a question, because that brings up another point, which is, I did see the governor say that she's not going to go by public opinion, pressure, loud voices. She's going to go by the data and the science behind the data. And so the business thing is one thing, but then when it comes to the K-12 masking, it's the health and welfare of students that are in our care.
Yep.
So it's hard to know which way she's going to lean, but I thought that was kind of a prescient kind of, I don't know. I don't know if she was preparing us or not. It's speculation at this point, but that is what she said when she said she is going to make that decision. And then the other thing is the judge put that stay and then on being overturned, right?
Yep.
That's how that worked. Because the legislature didn't vote this in. It was an executive order that she didn't have the authority at this point in time because of this. Yeah, it wasn't an emergency, if I got that right. So we don't know what the legislature is going to do about that either when it comes to the schools. And I think that's going to add to the confusion about businesses versus schools. If it's okay here, why is it not okay there? So
I
we
just
need-
had that question. It's a great piece around, so I speculate that the legislature is not going to do anything because they could have done it a week ago, 2 weeks ago. But there will be confusion on
Right.
Thursday and Friday.
Yep.
If the business side of mandates are expired and not renewed, then it's possible people are going to think that means school too. It doesn't. It's clear that school goes to the 21st. The governor has talked about that, and that she will make a decision on whether that gets extended.
Right.
But I think it's a great piece. Again, there's no easy answer to it, but shopping at Wegmans or your local grocery store, you don't get anything for that, but going to the grocery store, masked or unmasked, is different than sitting in an elementary classroom for 7.5 hours. Like, there's a difference piece. And when I say that, I know that there will be someone who will argue against that.
Yes.
It's not different, it's the same.
Right.
But I think that's how I look at it. It is different. Nobody's forced to go to a grocery store. Lots of options. Right now in New York State, you do have to attend school if you're school age. So, there's options of what school, but in terms of public school, you need to attend.
Right.
You don't have a choice. So there are those pieces that go into it and those nuances that I think we are sort of waiting and seeing.
Yeah.
But there definitely will be a shift in new information coming out
Right.
soon.
And what I have noticed also from what I've seen in the news that I've been watching is that the mandates that are ending, they're ending out a month.
Yep.
They're giving themselves a good 3-4 weeks. I think, Mark, to your point, to get everything kind of lined up so there's the least amount of confusion as possible. So I'm hoping that whatever, if she does decide to end it, that she gives us that.
That's typically
Yeah.
what happens with any of this in the state is we get a decision. And then typically, depending on what it is because it's not just COVID related, 48, 72 hours later, we'll get the guidance in the FAQ document that helps us enact a change.
Okay.
And so that's what's tricky is that,
Yeah.
that we're hoping that we get some of that. So, yep, I know I can speak to New Jersey. My understanding is that it ends like March 7th, but they announced it now. So they can give a few weeks to prepare and make sure everybody's questions are answered before it happens
Yeah.
and they move to optional masking in schools.
Right.
I am hopeful that
Me
that's
too.
going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think I surprise anyone where I sort of have given up hope on what happens out of Albany. Like, I hope, and we're advocating for
Yeah.
that. Our letter is advocating for that. We're not the only county of superintendents saying, you got to give us that exit ramp. You got to help us for our community. Really, on both sides, it's a split. It's split. I mean, this
It is.
you
It
don't
is.
talk about politics at the Thanksgiving dinner table with your extended family, and I think many of us have learned you don't talk about COVID either.
I
'cause
know,
people have
it's-
very strong opinions about it.
Yeah.
And I've told many people, I am not a medical doctor.
Right.
So for everybody who sends me an article that we need to mask, I will get an article saying that masks aren't working.
Yes.
So again, the CDC, the New York State Department of Health, our Monroe County Department of Health are all people in these positions. That is who we typically look to for guidance, advice, suggestions. Just to, put the surprise away, like, I am not on Facebook trying to find out what other people think. Like, it's really trying to listen to the people in those positions and then trying to do what's best for our kids so I can give recommendations to our school board.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the best that can be done.
All right. Okay, next topic.
Let's talk about something fun.
All right.
Next year's school calendar is here. So good news, we are starting with our kids after Labor Day, because that was the other thing. We did start before Labor Day, the way it fell. This is our calendar. It will, if approved tonight by the board, it will go out to the community tomorrow, be up on our webpage soon. Just want to talk about a few key dates for anybody watching, because they're really trying to plan their April 2023 vacation. But our first day for teachers is August 31st. The teachers would be with us on Wednesday and Thursday. Then they would be off for a long weekend of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Labor Day, the Monday. The first day back after Labor Day is just teachers and staff again, and then students would start Wednesday, September 5th. This is aligned to the Monroe County calendar, so most school districts will look very similar to that, if not exact. Our conference days are on here, and our holidays in terms of recesses, February and April. The Thanksgiving recess does include the very exciting Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Not all districts do that. It is a nice planning for travel. And we also have Juneteenth, which is now not just a state, but also a federal holiday on June 19th as a day off for all. And I think those are really the highlights here of where we are. All right. Oh,
Questions or comments? Barb?
Question or comment. The holiday recess that starts December 26th, I'm assuming that January 1st is the Monday, is the legal holiday. Is that why, or sorry, January 2nd is the legal holiday? Because
it's Sunday to Sunday. So the Christmas Day and New Year's Day are 1 week apart, so Sundays, and so it's observed on Monday the 2nd. Because
Okay.
it falls on a Sunday.
so that's why, okay.
You got that right, yep. So
So-
if the holiday falls on a Sunday, you observe it Monday. Saturday, you observe it Friday.
Oh, okay.
What?
If the federal holiday falls on a Saturday, it's observed as a day off on Friday.
Oh,
I only learned that this year.
I was just gonna
Just
say.
so you know. So if it falls on a Sunday, like New Year's Day next year, then we observe it on Monday.
On the actual day?
Yep.
Yes, okay. So Veterans Day then in 2024 will be a Saturday. Oh, no, it won't. It will be a leap year, so it'll be a Sunday. So you'll have Veterans Day then on Monday.
Without a calendar in front of me, I think you're right. Yeah.
Well, because this calendar shows Veterans Day is the 11th, which is a Friday, and that is Veterans Day.
So it would fall, yes, yep.
So then in 2024, it is leap year, so it will be that Sunday, just so, because I won't be here to help you guys with that. So.
Well, we're going to
How about
make a
this?
note of that.
Veterans Day.
We're gonna
Whenever
call you
it
back for
falls,
that
we will
meeting.
figure it out in 2024. I'm really living day by day right now.
We're going to call her back for that meeting.
But, no, that's good.
You can be our special presenter.
Oh, I could be.
Right.
right.
Yeah, there you go.
All right,
All right.
just little levity, there you go.
Thank you.
We always need that.
Catherine?
Yes, quick question. Is this going to be posted on our website?
Yes,
Okay.
so if approved by the board tonight,
Okay.
then we will get it up on the website and out to the community so people can start planning.
Yes, because
So-
we've already had questions.
Yep,
as-
100%.
Okay.
And this is early, like last year, sometimes it's March.
Right,
So
yeah.
we
Right.
really worked hard to get this, and just so you remember that the reason it takes some time is you've got to wait for the Monroe County calendar, because we really want to make sure our breaks are aligned in the county for parents and everybody else.
Okay, thank you.
And do we have an indication that Regents will be back to normal, or is that the assumption?
As of now, Regents are planned for this June, so they still are on
Okay.
the table. If I had to guess, I think we're going to see Regents in June and next year. They're really, pushing to get back to some normal.
Good.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell my kids that. We'll just, let them hope. But I do think we'll see Regents back.
Okay, any other questions on the calendar? All right.
I will now turn it over to Dr. Driffel for some business updates.
All right. Keep the fun stuff rolling. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. Hope everybody's doing well. Some updates from me tonight, primarily around budget development for next school year, 22-23. In accordance with our budget development process, we'll take a look at our first expenditure draft this evening. As Dr. Putnam mentioned earlier, our Director of Transportation, Mr. Mike Gala, is here, as we'll kind of take a deeper look into transportation and review some of their operational achievements this year. In accordance with our budget development calendar, it's board practice to adopt the levy limit calculation that we discussed last time. That's what's submitted to the state by March 1st. So we're just approving the calculation itself, not the actual levy at this point. And then on the facility side, we have two items for consideration of approval this evening. The first being the American Rescue Plan funded project. We finally got approval from Grants Finance at SED for HVAC work at Bay Trail. So this coincides with the other one, the SURSA funded project over at Indian Landing. So two separate projects completely funded by federal stimulus dollars. We'll discuss that a little bit later on. And then also we have a product standardization resolution for the board to consider tonight regarding our in-class univent systems, so the air handling systems. We use these across the district, and for reasons of efficiency, expediency, maintenance, training, we want to standardize that this is the make, the manufacturer that we're going to use moving forward in our bid specifications, so that a contractor can't come in and give us something that we're not familiar with. So we'll discuss that a little bit more too. So here's where we are in the budget development process, kind of, really amidst the thick of it here. So we have our first draft budget tonight to review. I can share that the second draft budget is already underway, and there's changes from what you're going to see this evening already. We're taking a look at revenue projections, trying to keep an ear out to Albany to see what's going to happen with state aid. Is it going to be a dollar-for-dollar match of the governor's proposal, or is it going to be something above and beyond from the Senate and Assembly as they release their one-house budgets here in the next 6 weeks or so? And then later in the spring, we'll have our proposed budget ready for board consideration in April. The legal requirements around notifications, our budget hearing scheduled for May 3rd. And of course, the community vote and board election is always the third Tuesday in May, so that's May 17th this year. So for the 22-23 expenditure budget, we do have some new information from our meeting 2 weeks ago. The BOCES budget was finally released this past week. We're working through that with all of our internal stakeholders. A lot of our department leaders touch that budget because it's such a massive part of our programming. So it's technology, it's transportation, it's buildings and grounds, it's Dr. Maloney looking at the instructional side of things. So the initial request is back due to them at the end of February. So we'll have more information at our March meetings about more refined BOCES budget information. The numbers that you'll see tonight are just kind of conservative estimates. New York State Teachers Retirement System finalized their employer contribution rate this year at 10.29%, which is up slightly from last year's 9.8%. They had given us a range of 10 to 10.5, so kind of came in right in the middle there, so up a little bit. Remaining unknowns, ongoing collective bargaining. At our last meeting, we did ratify a contract for our transportation unit, but we still have expiring contracts come June 30th. Learner needs. This is really the time of year where we're looking at our students. We're doing high school scheduling. We're doing annual reviews, really trying to ensure that all the proper supports are in place for each one of our kids. But that's a process. It takes some time, and we'll learn more about that throughout the spring. We're continuing to monitor enrollment, and specifically our kindergarten registration numbers. As of now, we're still on track with our projections that we had looked at back in November. But things can change there as well, so we'll keep a close eye on that. And we don't know about insurance costs. This is always one of the last things that we get clarity on in the spring, but we've been told that we can look to an increase of around 4 to 6%, which, as you'll see in the forthcoming slides, is kind of the general inflationary trends that we're seeing, sort of that 4, 5, 6% range. So here is the two ways to slice a budget by function and object. So really high level, we'll dive into the functional components in further slides. But in general, you can see our current school year budget is $104,343,650. And next year, as of now, we're looking at a 4.94% increase. This is a conservative number. I think it's a starting point. I think we might see improvement over the course of the next couple months. This would be the largest relative year-over-year increase that we've had in about 10 years, going back to like 2009, 2010, as the tax cap legislation went into effect and state aid was depressed for the last decade or so. We were in a much more tighter fiscal inflationary environment. So a little bit of a high number there. I'll start kind of just walking through some of the high-level things. General support represents about 10% of our budget. It's everything related to district office, operations and maintenance, legal services, insurance, board operations. We'll go through that a little bit, up 8% year over year. Our instructional costs represent over half of our costs. This is our teachers. It's everything that's happening in our school buildings. We'll walk through all of these specific line items in a couple slides. Transportation, as I mentioned, Mr. Gall is here tonight. We'll talk about the transportation budget for next year, currently projected to be up a little over 7%. Undistributed costs look at debt service, employee benefits, interfund transfers, which are general fund transfers, expenditures that we send to other funds, so the cafeteria fund and grant funds, up about 3% year over year. The other way we slice it is by object, so personnel costs. We say it every year that education is absolutely a relationship-based business. We're in the people business, so about 48% of our costs are tied up in wages and earnings, up a projected 5.5% for next year. Contractual costs, this is everything related to professional services that the district doesn't do itself. So our partners, utility costs, fuel costs, all of those specific things, up 8% currently as our current projection. BOCES costs, close to 6%, 5.8% there. Equipment and supplies, closer to even year over year, just a 0.5% projected increase at this point. Debt service sees a noticeable decline, almost an 8% reduction in accordance with our planned debt service schedule. Employee benefits up a little over 5.5%, and we'll touch on more of those. And interfund transfers, that's 6%, so that's just up $10,000, but relatively a large number there. So again, very early, a lot will change. Here's kind of, the year-over-year budget distribution, looking at those object-based expenditures. And on an annual basis, we make so many different changes, and we're always like parsing out this piece of equipment or this kind of FTE position. And by and large, the structure of where our dollars go remains pretty similar. So I think it's important that sometimes while we get into the weeds on some really small things, structurally, a lot of what we do is very similar to the year prior. So I want to dive in first to that general support part of the budget. So board operations relates to all of the mandated board functions. So this relates to the district clerk. It relates to the May vote, all the district officials that need to be paid for that, all of the legal notices and advertising that go into that. It relates to the board policy services, any professional development, supplies and materials, memberships to NISBA and Fort County School Boards Association. $10,000 increase projection there. Central office is the superintendent's office and administrative assistant. Business and finance relates to the 10 or so folks that we have up in the second floor district office. This is also where we have by and large, all of our BOCES costs, the administrative costs are here. About $1.5 million are in BOCES costs. A noticeable increase there. Human resources, the handful of folks that work to serve our employees, up about $32,000 year over year. Operations and maintenance, so this is the central services, the buildings and grounds and facilities team. The big jump here is a combination of wages, but also utility costs. Natural gas and electricity are seeing some noticeable increases. At our next meeting, we'll have our director of facilities, Mr. George English here. And we'll kind of talk through some of those more in detail, but big price increases there. Professional services relates to our legal teams, relates to the mandated auditing services that we have, it relates to our insurance costs that we have to carry. Again, kind of seeing some inflated numbers there, up over 10% year over year, or $60,000. Public information relates to everything that comes out of the district with newsletters and paper, postage, printing fees, and things like that. And then the BOCES administrative costs are our share of our BOCES admin costs, prorated on a basis across the county, depending on how many students are in a school district. So the general support budget, up a projected 8% for now, represents about 10% of our budget, so more to come on that. The lion's share of our cost as a school district obviously are baked into instruction, so close to $59 million for next year on that $109 million budget. It's more than half the budget. The top line number is curriculum development, so this relates to Dr. Maloney's office, Ms. Potter's office, The big jump here is the movement of 2 administrative positions that are currently in the school supervision category. So it's just more appropriate to align them to the curriculum folks. School supervision relates to the building principals and all the main offices at our 6 school buildings. So all of the folks that work in those main offices, looking at a 3.5% bump there currently. Classroom instruction relates to all of the regular classroom programs that we have across the district, an increase of just shy of $850,000 or a little over 3%. Special programs, this is kind of a conservative number at this point because it's so closely tied to our BOCES costs and our out-of-district placements, which are still being further evaluated. But you can see we have a healthy increase there of $1.1 million or a little over 8%. Occupational education relates to the vocational training programs that we have, primarily through BOCES. We have about 65 kiddos at the high school that are taking advantage of these career and technical education programs this year. They're wonderful programs. They can be expensive placements. They're over $10,000 each. So we're working really close with the high school to determine what the enrollment in those programs is going to look like for next year. The library and technology, kind of the instructional media portions of the budget. Library's up a little over 5%. Technology, because it's tied so closely to those BOCES expenditures, in there as a conservative number. I anticipate that coming down a little bit. But you could see, big increases as it's close to $3.5 million next year. Pupil services relates to our guidance offices, our social workers, our psychologists, all the work that we sometimes refer to as our mental health teams to put the scaffolding around our kids as we honor here at Penfield that whole child and ensure that everybody's getting the appropriate supports that they need. And then finally, extracurricular. These are our clubs and the interscholastic athletics that we have here at Penfield. We offer an array of opportunities for our kids, and that will continue for next year as we see a projected cost increase of a little under $60,000. So all in all, in instruction, a little over 5% projected increase for next year, or just shy of $3 million in costs. So I want to spend a little more time diving deeper into depth with transportation. So transportation is Mr. Gala. You can come on up, Mike, and do the thing. It's been a challenge, like all of our district has the last 2 years, but particularly with transportation and the labor shortages associated with finding good bus drivers, with the kind of onerous requirements, from the federal level on those school bus drivers. So for our office staff and mechanics, we're projecting an increase of about $37,000 for next year. Bus drivers, with that new ratified collective bargaining agreement, we see about $270,000 in increased budgeted costs. Equipment down a little bit relative to our needs, what they were last year. The big jump in contractual items for this year is the contract transportation. So this is the outsourced transportation where we don't have the means to get kids to where they need to go. So we rely on bidded contract transportation. So that's a big jump for next year. Mr. Gallo will talk a little bit about some of the strides we've made in that arena, trying to pare that down, but it's still a concern for us. While we're seeing increased fuel costs, because we are in some ways streamlining some of our runs, our mileage has actually been kind of an offset to that. So we're keeping our fuel costs at the same budgeted amount for next year. Materials and supplies, very similar year over year, just down $2,500. The bus garage costs relate to the overhead associated with the bus garage, so supplies, the electricity over there, the water, the natural gas, so on and so forth. And then finally, BOCES transport, as Mr. Gallo will touch on a little bit. BOCES does a lot of transportation for us, but increasingly over the last couple of years, they've not been able to do as much due to their labor shortage. So we're seeing a projected cost decrease there. But for transportation, seeing a projected cost increase of a little over $300,000 or 7% year over year. So I want to turn it over to Mr. Gala. Mike, I think you have a clicker there, but if it does not work, I can kind of walk through it, okay?
Okay, we'll start here. Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Gala. Some of you already know me.
Oh, Mike, have you been in front of the board before? In your
Never.
role?
No, this is my first shot.
No pressure.
No, not at all.
No, Mike's been wonderful as our Director of Transportation, stepping in and really doing great stuff, so thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you, thank you. So I thought I'd start off real quick with some of our staff and what we're dealing with right now, and go from there, and we'll get into a little bit more of that. I will keep it relatively short, but I did want to mention these few things. Right now, as you know or may not know, we have 4 new office staff members. The dispatcher is brand new this year. The router is brand new. The safety coordinator's been there for a year now. That's Bob Singer. The router is Andy Douch, and the dispatcher is Mike Iannello. And the director, of course, is me, and I've only been there for 7 months now. So we have a brand new office in here. We are working and struggling and trying to learn and keep up with everything that's going on the best that we can. And it's just, I just want to say I think it's a great group of people, very energetic, very willing to learn, and we're moving forward pretty well. Currently, we have 65 drivers. 14 attendants, 4 mechanics. I have 6 drivers in training right now. Needless to say, everybody's got the same issues going on. We have had a very challenging year so far. We've managed to keep up with the COVID, the sick time, the retirements, and the ways, the changing every day of what are we doing today modes. And we've managed to keep up with all of that, and that's basically because we have a great group of drivers and attendants who are very flexible and willing to help out in what's going on here. We're very fortunate in Penfield. I think this group that I've worked with for 10 years now are really dedicated people. So I wanted to put that out there. And let's see here. All right, in training right now, we have 2 drivers ready to start and 1 attendant. We have 1 driver actually literally started today, and she will be on board to drive actual runs for us probably the week after we come back from break, so that's a plus. I have 2 trainees going down for their road test on February break, so there's 2 more. And then we'll have 3 trainees left with dates for road test to be determined, but probably towards the end of March. So as good as that sounds, we're still down 10. So we can't actually have more than we do right now because we just don't have the means to train them. But 6 is a good number right now, and it will get us out of some of the difficult situations we're in. You may or may not have heard about the new training that's going to be required of the drivers. The federal's FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Yeah, here we go. Federal Motor Safety Administration has set a minimum entry-level training, and it's being regulated by the FMCSA. This went into effect. They tried to start this 2 years ago, and they weren't ready for it. So they are ready for it now, so they tell us, and we went into effect starting yesterday, the 7th. So as of 2/7, the requirements for a bus driver to train, on top of everything you already know and all the craziness of going under the hood and all those things, we have a new curriculum of details we have to teach. Once we teach that information, it goes to ELDT, and they agree that we've taught it, and then they will release it. And they release it to the state, to New York State, who, or whatever state you happen to be going to, but for us it's New York, obviously. And once they release that to New York State will then allow us to take a road test. So it's a whole nother level of stuff we have to go through before we can even get to the road test. So I'm not sure how that's going to all work out. It's just starting. We are we are ready to go. We have the certifications in place. We did that a couple weeks ago. So as far as the federal part of this is, we're all set with that. Bob Singer and myself are currently certified with New York State as 19A trainers and school bus trainers. The facility itself, Penfield Central Schools, is a training facility just based on what we've done. What that really means is we can train other schools if we had to, if there was an emergency or something like that. Bob or myself can do that. We need to bring in some more trainers and get them certified in the event one of, whatever might happen going down the road so that we're prepared for it. Not an easy process, time-consuming process. I've been working on this prior as my position in safety coordinator for almost 2 years. A year and a half of it has been writing curriculum, and Bob Singer has actually put this together for us in a format that I think is going to outdo what they're expecting. So I'm pretty happy about that. All right, DOT, Department of Transportation, we'll talk about our buses just a little bit here. I'm going to show some pictures. The buses that we had 5 of them held due to floor rot. I'm going to show some pictures which look terrible. They're not as bad as they look, so don't freak out. But they are, DOT did not pass them, and rightfully so, as you see them. And I have to, oh, perfect. All right. So if you look at the picture, what we're looking at is at the bottom of the bus, and you can see the one rib that's up against the black is all corroded. You can see some salt inside of it. That's supposed to be a solid piece there. And these bars that are running across the top, if you think of it like the joists in your basement holding up the floor in the house, that's what this is. So what we did, there's a picture of it upside down so you can see down at it a little differently. So the floor of the bus is now on the bottom of that picture. What we're doing is repairing these buses in-house. And you see that shiny piece of steel has been put in place. And then we're taking and welding it into place and TIG welding it on the bottom, all those little dots on the bottom of it, and then at each end of it is welded on. I tell you this for a couple of reasons. One, we're repairing them in-house. Adam Lightfoot, our new mechanic, he's been with us probably 6 or 7 months now, came from a collision shop that worked on buses and trucks. And some of the school buses that he worked on had this exact problem. So he's a welder, and he has been able to do 1 or 2 buses for us a month, fixing these for us. So we're not sending them out. Had we sent them out, we had estimates of upwards of $8,000–$10,000 to be repaired. So we're doing them in-house for nearly, the cost of material, which
Is that $810 per bus if we send them out?
$8,000 to $10,000 per bus.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I apologize, the typo there. It's $40,000 we approximately saved so far on the 5 buses that we've worked on. So, the point of this is that we're trying to save money. Dan asked me in the beginning, how are we going to save money? How are we going to lower the budget? And I said, well, let's look at a couple different things, and here's one of them. There are some alternatives to sending things out all the time. We need to bring people in to do it. That being said, we can also possibly, in my opinion, and I'm still working on this, hold on to these buses a little bit longer. Diesel engines will run 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles. They won't in a school system simply because they're stopping and going, very much like an RTS bus, but they will go 150,000 miles without any major issues with them. Our buses, we're sending them back or trading them with less than 100,000 miles on them, mainly because of the condition of the floors and the body. So I want to look into the cost versus the longevity of the cost of the undercoating that I've talked to some of the schools with that are doing it. And it's a 50-50 ratio. There's pros and cons to it, and I haven't really decided yet what the best way to go. But the undercoating for these buses is a substantial amount of money. They come in once a year, respray them, and they guarantee them for 10 years. So if we can keep the bus in good shape from a body standpoint and we keep it running, maybe we can get 120, 130,000 miles out of them and not be buying them so frequently, which obviously is going to save us some money. Our buses are DOT inspected every 6 months, so that kind of rust that you just saw there is being seen over and over again. And when it gets to the point where the DOT says, all right, this is enough, we have to work on it, that's how that comes about. Our rating is 98%. We lost a couple buses, so our percentage went down, but we are at a 98% overall DOT rating, so that's a good thing. Our operation right now, we have 57 large buses, 16 mini buses. We have 2 mini wheelchair buses. We have 1 leased wheelchair bus. I thank the board for approving that leased wheelchair bus because that allowed us to take back from one of our contractors, one of our students, and bring him back in and use us along with that bus as capable of doing many other runs for us at the same time. So that saved us a significant amount of money, someplace around $40,000 just in contract cost for 1 student. We have 280 in-district runs. We have 37 out-of-district runs. 28 schools are served. Currently, we have contracted 6 runs out for 4 different schools with RMT. And when we started in September, and this is a huge number, and I didn't do this because I don't want to get our hopes up too high about this, but when we started in September, we had 17 students being transported. Then we went down to 16 the following month. And today, when I printed it out and got the bill this morning, we're down to 6. And each one of those students, if they're being transported twice a day, is $300 a day. So we went from 17 to 6, so that is a huge savings. I think Dan had mentioned that we upped the budget for contracting because at any time we could get into a situation where we still can't do it and we're going to have to pay them to do it. And I anticipate their rates are going to go even higher simply for fuel costs and everything else that we're dealing with right now. So I'm hoping that we're going to keep down the number where we're at, but I put it out at just in case. Okay. And BOCES continues to do our runs, but as Dan mentioned, the school, they will not transfer to our schools. They'll only go to the outside schools. They stopped doing this 2 years ago, so they're not able to do, for the same reason as lack of drivers, they're not able to do everything that we would like them to do. They are considerably less expensive than the outside contract, and we try to push as much as we can to them, but it is the way it is right now. And that's pretty much all I have to give to you right now. Any questions?
Board members. Catherine.
Hi.
Hi.
So, thanks for your presentation. I wanted to know on the new information that you just showed us right there, that packet.
Mhm.
That's the new regulations to be taught, you said? Or not regulations to be taught, but curriculum to be taught?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what can you tell us just briefly? Like what is that designed to do? Is that more safety? Is it more knowledge of the bus? Is it what is it about that new curriculum that is so,
Okay.
different from what was already there?
It really isn't much different.
Oh.
What's different is that it is across the board, across the country now.
Okay.
The feds are looking at it from one standpoint, and then each state is different. New York State, we have a very good safety record.
Mhm.
School buses, I'm talking. We train Penfield very similar to this already.
Okay.
This basically is, when you read it, it's talking about the legal responsibility of the driver, the ticketing, you have one drink out to dinner, a glass of wine, and you're legally impaired versus a regular driver. It talks about all of these kinds of things. It talks about rules of the road. It talks about all that stuff. And we do that now. What this is doing is making it so that it's the same across every state.
Okay.
Okay? Once we go through this curriculum with the student, the driver, there's what they call a 30-hour course. Within the first year of driving is required of all CDL drivers to take. That 30-hour course is basically this.
Okay.
Okay? So they learn it in the very beginning, and then within the first year, they take a course with an exam at the end of it that they have to pass. And that's after they have their license. And to be a school bus driver in New York State, you have to pass that 30-hour course or you start over.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board members? I have a couple questions. And
Sure.
since you're talking about this curriculum, this is a bus driver-specific curriculum, correct?
This is a CDL Class B CDL licensing curriculum.
Okay.
School bus falls into it.
So,
So you could have a Class B license and drive a 26-foot straight Raymore Flanagan truck, but you don't have a P&S endorsement, a passenger endorsement, a school bus endorsement, or any of that. You do have air brakes. So it's a Class B license. We add the P&S portion to it to make it a school bus. P&S endorsement is school bus.
okay. Because, with the CDL test, we've got the temporary waiver on the under the hood portion of the test because it wasn't really relevant to bus drivers. Hopefully that you're starting to see that in the recent test students or learners that are being tested. So the question is, and I think it kind of led to it, how much of that stuff is outside the realm of a bus driver? And is that something that is an impairment, like the CDL part of it was sort of an impairment to getting people tested and licensed? Does this have the same kind of impairments?
I'm going to say no at the moment because what they've asked us to do is make our own curriculum, okay, and self-certify with them that we're doing it. We've attested that we did it, and we said we're going to do it, and we're going to follow all the rules. We always train to the manual, New York State's manual, and we always add in our own stuff to it to enhance, the experience, because nobody wants to read the book and just think that they're going to be done. We go out on the bus and we say, this is why we do this. This is, in my opinion, for those states that don't have a good handle on training drivers. It's really designed for trucking. A lot of it is for trucking because you have over-the-road truckers, you have young people, you have older people, you have a gamut of people, good and bad, driving vehicles. You've seen it on the road, you all drive. I think it's a good thing. I'm just concerned about the amount of time it's adding to getting a driver. So if I have a good driver and I spend 2-3 weeks with them right out on the road, 4 or 5 hours a day, they're ready to go for a road test, and I'm very comfortable with that. If I have to do this and wait for this to go through the federal portion of it, and then wait for them to talk to the state and say the state has to approve us to go take a test now, and then I have to get on a test site and wait for I don't know the answer. It just started, so we're optimistic.
So that has a time impact,
It's
the whole-
definitely going to have a time
that
impact.
This new arrangement has got a time impact on us. And so we kind of gained a little bit, but lost a little bit again.
So the correct answer to all of this, if we could ever get them to agree, is that a school bus driver, a Class B school bus driver, should be a classification by itself. There is absolutely no reason that I need anybody to go under the hood of that school bus. We have DOT every 6 months. We have a maintenance program that brings the bus into the shop every 30 days to just go over the oil, go over everything in it. And if for any reason we feel there's something wrong, the driver feels there's something wrong with the bus, we just bring it around back, write it up, tell them what's going on, and they look at it right on the spot. So there's even the windshield wash. It doesn't necessarily get done by the driver anymore. There is no reason. And if you've ever seen them open the hoods, there's 2 latches, big rubber latches on the side, and then you got to pull the whole thing back. There's a lot of people can't pull that back, especially when you put 10 inches of snow on it. It's just ridiculous. It really needs to be a separate license. And in saying that, they shouldn't, that Class B school bus driver should not have the ability to drive a 26-foot straight 80,000-pound truck down the street or anything to that effect. They can only drive school bus. We're not there.
That's the cleanest way I think I've heard it say, though,
Me
Mike,
too.
is that it needs to be a separate classification.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we, a couple years ago, when these changes went, and your predecessor came, and the board has been really pushing in Penfield, advocating to change that, but I think that's the cleanest way I've heard it say in terms of advocacy from the board level to the federal side is make it a separate classification.
Yes.
Because again, our buses aren't riding down the thruway on a regular basis. A
Correct.
lot of it is the house stop school, and then on the way back. But that's the cleanest way. Can you make that happen? Can you get a hold of Morelli and?
I was just talking to him this week.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
We've
Good
been talking to
advocacy.
them a lot.
I will touch on that in a moment.
Okay.
So again, questions for the general part of the budget too?
No, just transportation for now.
Just, I mean, you got more to cover here, or we?
A little bit.
Okay.
Budget time of year.
So can I ask another, then transportation
Sure.
related thing?
Yeah.
The fuel costs we talked about, airline, and I'm trying to think of the right term, but airlines basically do buy a lot, I don't want to say futures, but they buy long-term contracts for fuel. They try to hedge the price of fuel going up and down.
Mm-hmm.
Do we do any of that?
No, we don't lock in contracts. We're sort of party to that with our healthcare consortium, because Excellus will lock in rates with healthcare providers for a long period, but we as an entity aren't large enough to execute future contracts. We bid it out competitively on a regular basis, but we're not locking in something like McDonald's locks in the price of beef, so they know for 6 months what their Happy Meal is going to cost. But no, we don't do that.
Is it because of the size? Like we don't
Yeah,
have
it's
enough
scale.
of that
It's scale,
to,
yeah.
to be able to do
We
it?
don't have that purchasing power.
Can we get like a transportation consortium together like the healthcare consortium? Of course, fuel might be a moot point before long.
Another point. Yep.
We'll give that to Mike for his next 7 months.
Okay.
Next year. Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, I don't know if are there other board questions?
I'm just going to thank them.
Yep.
Thank you so much. It was a great
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
You set the bar high for yourself for next year. But as Mike's going, I know we've got a lot and we're going through, but just again, as for the community, the board knows this, but for the community as well, like this is one of those groups of it's unsung heroes. You don't see the behind the scenes, and there are days, and we had to do it last year. We had to close school because of transportation, because of staffing, and there are days that, not to pull the curtain back too far, but where it's touch and go in the morning on what we're going to do. And Mike brings a sense of optimism on, like, we can figure it out. Like, he's always trying to figure it out. You did a great job talking about how great your team is. I agree with you, but I also want to make sure that you get those kudos too, that your vision there and your work and how you connect and communicate with Dan especially, but myself, just really, really appreciate it, because, without the school buses, we don't have school. That's just the reality. And so I know sometimes it's like, I used to say it's like Scotch tape and gingerbread frosting holding some things together. Not the buses, they're safe, but the staffing side of it. So just thank you, Mike, very much on behalf of the district, and I know I can speak on behalf of the board. Just thank you for all,
Yeah,
and please bring that
absolutely.
back to transportation.
Yeah, I echo that. Thanks, Mike, for, as Tom said, your can-do attitude. Today was one of those mornings. I called over. They were scrambling. They had to call in. All the office staff came in early, took runs. It's kind of a daily firefight, and they really don't get the credit they deserve. And Mike and his team have been creative with saving money. They're really building a culture and a team over there. The drivers really support what they're doing. We've got a really good group So if anybody's interested or you know somebody interested, you know, it's a good team to be a part of. And just can't thank you enough, Mike.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so the last part of the first draft of the expenditure budget that I want to talk about is the functional domain of the undistributed costs. So this is the community services, employee benefits, debt service and interfund transfers. Community services is strictly related to the district census capacity, our district registrar. So that's just a salary line item. The employees' retirement system, as we discussed back in November, is seeing a substantial decrease in their employee contribution rate from 16% down to 11%. So you can see a big drop, $300,000 in expected costs for that group of employees. The teachers' retirement system, as we discussed a little earlier, projected to go up, but then also not just the contribution rate, but then wages go up as well. So trying to match that with that. Payroll taxes are the FICA, so this is the Social Security tax and the Medicare tax that's taxed on our payroll, so 6.2% for Social Security, 1.45% for Medicare, projected up a little over $200,000. Workers' compensation, as I mentioned at our last meeting, the consortium is performing very well, so we're going to see a premium decline for the second straight year, a little over a 2% decline. Unemployment insurance and disability insurance, more or less flat year over year with just the $2,500 expected increase in costs. Health and dental insurance contribution to health savings account, the administrative cost of running FSAs, HRAs, HSAs. Trend right now for 22 is about 8.5% for medical. As Mr. Elledge pointed out, what we're seeing in some of the other neighboring consortiums that aren't on a calendar year, more on a fiscal year, is really rising costs on the back end. So we know what our costs are for calendar year 2022, where we're in now, but that only makes up half of the fiscal year for 22-23. So we don't know what the health care costs are going to be yet from January 1st of 23 to June 30th of 2023, but I'm kind of expecting they're going to go up. Because you're seeing all the hospital systems starting to kind of put out these statements that they're dealing with the same issues everybody else is with labor shortages and having to respond to those inflationary pressures. So we don't have any real good consortium data yet, just 1 month into the calendar year. But maybe over the course of the next month or two, we'll have better data to potentially update this number for next year. Debt service, as I mentioned before, scheduled to decline about $500,000 for next year in accordance with our debt schedules with our municipal advisors. And then interfund transfers. These are the two transfers that we send to the school lunch fund to subsidize any deficit they incur. And then for summer special education programming, which is not aided by the state, we pay for out of pocket there. So all in all, this is typically an area where the budget can go up a lot, and we're only expected to see about a 3% overall increase for next year. So matching to potential revenue, just to kind of try to build a story. So tonight we are asking the board to adopt that local levy limit formula that we showed last time. I won't walk through it all again, but it is the same as last time. So we'll certify this with the Department of Tax and Finance, SED, State Comptroller's Office. But if we look at our potential revenue as of today, $69.5 million in local funding, that would be the max if we went up to the cap. The projected state education aid that was in the Governor Hochul's executive budget, just shy of $35 million. The county sales taxes that we received from Monroe and Wayne County and all other revenue were a little over $110 million. And if you think back to where we were in the projected costs, we were at a little under 109. So right now we're in great shape on the budget. We have the revenue to support the increased costs we're seeing. And it's still very early, but it's likely we won't even have to levy up to the cap because in here we're not even assigning any available fund balance yet either. So good news for the community is that I don't think we're going to have any trouble making the ends meet this year for the budget, putting a balanced budget to the community that's going to be certainly within the tax cap and potentially lower. So for next steps, it's a busy month for advocacy. I know there's a lot with NYSBA and NISCUS. We're spending a lot of time working through the COVID restrictions, but there's also a budget process happening as well behind the scenes. We'll submit that levy calculation in New York State. That's due March 1st, so long as the board approves that tonight. We have 2 more regular scheduled board meetings with budget workshop on the calendar for March 1st and March 22nd, where we'll continue to refine the budget appropriations and have a clearer idea of where we're going to be. That state budget is due April 1st. And then in accordance with our budget development calendar, we will have a proposed 2022-23 budget for board consideration come our meeting on April 12th. And with that, before I go on, because I do have another thing, any budget-related discussion before we move on.
Okay. So board members,
Great job.
I think we're ready to move on.
Okay. So going back to those 2 facilities items that I mentioned tonight, so these are up for board review tonight. The first being that American Rescue Plan funded capital work at Bay Trail. It includes in the resolution a seeker analysis. It is a type 2 negative declaration. There's no adverse environmental impact from the proposed scope of work. The maximum cost for this one is just over $660,000, and again, fully grant funded. Not a single general fund dollar will be touched. It's all just part of the federal stimulus funds in support of better air filtration in the building. The other one is associated, that product standardization resolution that I talked about with those Univent classroom air handler systems. So all we're doing with this is saying that it's beneficial for the district to have a single manufacturer in this regard. It's been completely vetted by the engineering team, our Department of Facilities, our maintenance folks, the building custodians, our construction managers, and our attorneys. So we really fully vetted it out. And part of this is in association with the project. We really want to use this specific product, but due to supply chain issues, it's at least a 6-month wait time. And we really want to achieve some of this work over the summer. So if we have a standardization resolution as a district, the manufacturer will more or less set aside a couple units to know that whatever contractor comes in with lowest bid on this has to use that product. So that's a secondary benefit. Yeah, so any further discussion on those facilities items?
Board members. I would just say that, again, just reiterating what you said, for the HVAC, you know, we've got this this federal grant, and so it's really short-term dollars, but we're using it for a capital project, which gives us a long-term benefit. Which is really the way they've intended us to use it, and it's the smart way to use this money.
Yep. All of the guidance that's come out and said, be very careful about your utilization of federal dollars. You don't want to create a fiscal cliff where you have this inflow of money for 2 years and maybe you're spending in a way that's not sustainable. Then come 2 years from now, you don't have the revenue, the inflows to support whatever program you had implemented. With this, we know it's a long-term capital improvement. It's aligned to the intention of the program, and we think it'll be an impactful benefit for our kids.
Thank you.
I would like Dan to add some more slides. No, I really appreciate Dan's presentation, and I think it helps. I know the board is aware, but like for the full community to really look at all of the pieces that build the budget for a school district. It's not just one piece, it's not just teachers, it's everything that's there, and then aligning to where we are with the monies coming in too, I think is helpful. And just Dan had mentioned, this is the first go, and then it gets fine-tuned as we get closer. So thanks, Dan. I'll turn it over now to Dr. Maloney to talk about what I'm continue to be very excited about. I just have to tell you, this team, in terms of the things we've done in 6 months, really things that have been talked about, and just, you know, the federal, or sorry, the state aid around pre-K has been great. But I'll turn it over to Dr. Maloney, and her team has just done great things.
Thank you, Dr. Putnam. Tonight you will be approving the UPK contract for the 5 community-based organizations that we will be partnering with. So just a reminder for the board as well as the public, as Dr. Putnam mentioned, Universal Pre-K is New York State grant funded. We will be offering a full-day program, 5.5 hours, including meals. Offering a social, emotional, and play-based curriculum aligned with the New York State pre-kindergarten standards. As mentioned, the State Education Department allocations we have 116 UPK spots available. Since we are partnering with all 5 of the community-based organizations, we will be able to offer the full 116 spots. And just a reminder, families need to provide transportation. Some common questions that we have received related to the CBOs: why is the district working with multiple CBOs? So in the proposal each CBO submitted, they indicated the number of students they were interested in accommodating. So by contracting with all 5 CBOs, we are able to offer all of the 116 allotments, as well as provide families with location options. So coincidentally, the 5 CBOs are located across the Penfield District catchment, which increases the chance of a CBO being conveniently located for families. With regards, well, we're talking about options. Some of the CBOs offer wraparound care for an additional cost, so that might be more appealing. So we really were able to offer families options. Another common question: do CBOs need to be located within the school district's catchment? No. Per the state education department, districts have the ability to contract with CBOs outside of the district. So you'll see some of the CBOs listed there are very close to our district boundaries and right outside. So once hearing the answer to that question, the typical follow-up question is, are these CBOs partnering with other school districts in addition to Penfield to offer UPK? Could my child be in a UPK class with a student from another district? So no, at this time, all CBOs are only partnering with Penfield to offer UPK. This is where it gets interesting. So it is possible for a CBO to place additional children in a UPK class to reach the average class size of 18. So for example, Children's Continuous Care has 26 Penfield UPK openings. So they may choose to have a class of 18, which then leaves 8 Penfield UPK openings. And Children's Continuous Care may elect to fill that class of 8 with 10 students outside of the Penfield UPK program. In that situation, the families of those 10 students would incur a cost through Children's Continuous Care, and those families would be selected by Children's Continuous Care, so they could be families who live outside of the district. Next slide, Dr. Driffel.
Okay.
So the UPK program will follow the district calendar and run from September through June. And as I mentioned, wraparound care is available at some of the CBOs. Families will need to incur a cost for wraparound care. Universal Pre-K is open to children who will be 4 years old on or before December 1st, 2022. And I know this piece is also confusing, but per New York State, children who are age eligible to attend kindergarten are not eligible for UPK. In some families, this is confusing. If families have any questions, feel free to email myself, Leslie Maloney. I'm happy to help answer any questions. Students will be selected to participate through an equitable lottery system. Families will have the option to rank their preference for CBOs in addition to indicating whether the family would like to be put on a wait list. So a common question relative to the wait list: if a student in UPK moves out of the district in, let's say, November, will a student on the wait list be offered the spot? And the answer is yes, if there is still a wait list at the time an opening occurs. So we would call the family on the wait list and offer the opening to them. As I mentioned, average class size will be 18 students with 1 teacher and 1 paraprofessional. So per New York State regulations, the maximum class size for a pre-kindergarten class is 20 children. And for classes up to 18 students, there must be 1 teacher and 1 paraprofessional assigned to each class. The CBOs that we are working with, they all indicated that their average class size will be 18 students, and that's what our number allotments allow for. And just another note, teachers must be certified in early childhood. So I'm going to put a plug in here. A huge thank you to Nancy Bradstreet, our Director of Communications. Check out the Universal Pre-K Quick Link on the district website for more information. If you're looking at the website, on the left-hand column where all the quick links are, there's a Universal Pre-K Quick Link. That will take you to a page which includes a recording of the community session, our FAQ, and the application. Dr. Driffel, if you will transition to the next slide. So our virtual community information session was on February 2nd, and we did record that session. So families who are interested, again, go to the quick links on the left-hand side of the district webpage, where it says Universal Pre-K. Enrollment is currently open, as you can see there, February 7th through March 14th. Interested families can find the application on the website under quick links, Universal Pre-K. And enrollment ends March 14th. The lottery selection process will take place after March 14th. SED requires that school districts must establish a random process to select eligible children, and no preferences can be given. Then April 1st, families will be notified of their child's status, and students who will be participating in UPK will need to complete the formal registration process with the district. The program starts in September of 2022. I have to give a huge shout out to Mary Sapone and Taylor Ramsey. They have been working diligently behind the scenes to make this incredible opportunity available to our families, and we are all just really excited. I know Barb and I have talked in the past. We worked together on the full day K committee, and today Nancy and Sharon and I we think it might have been 11 years ago.
Yeah.
We were trying to remember back, and we talked at that time about once we get full day K, then we'll go to UPK, and so here we are 11 years later. So very exciting.
Okay.
As a
Board
matter of
members.
fact, I distinctly remember at the big meeting we had for all-day kindergarten, in the audience was the then high school principal, or vice principal, I believe, and his wife, because their son was getting ready to go to for kindergarten.
That's right. They were in the audience.
He sounds amazing. And just for fun, yeah, my kid and I appreciate Leslie mentioned this, is that, so so our oldest, we kept back a year
Right.
because of the late birthday. But they wouldn't be eligible for pre-K per New York State, not because of Penfield, but if you hold back, and many families do that, it's a choice. We tend to find more boys do nationally than girls, but hold back, they wouldn't be able to go. But they were the first group of full day K, and very exciting. And now, believe it or not, now that we've got pre-K, we're really excited. I got another one who's eligible for the first year of pre-K.
Oh, wow.
So I believe I got a text right before I left here that we're signed up, like we're in, but we got to wait and see.
Right.
So I acknowledge this with parents, it is later because I think it's the first year, we have to get the CBOs and everything like that. I would hope that as we continue this, we can do the lottery earlier in future years potentially, but now it's tough because a lot of families are like me where we're probably not going to be a UPK family because we have to sign a contract with another facility and we lose our spot if we wait. So it's a gamble. But
Oh, okay.
does that make sense? Like
Yeah,
it's tricky.
yeah.
But
Well, and again, this
Yes,
is the first year. This is the pilot
first year.
Yeah.
And one of the things I got a comment around like it's not universal pre-K because not every kid can be in it. And so this year it's 116 spots. It's called universal pre-K because that's really what the state calls it. So
Right.
that's why that term comes. It's not universal. There is potentially a wait list and all those pieces. Potentially the district could build, but everything beyond those 116 spots would have to come out of our general budget, and we're not prepared for that. But we'll see how things go. And Leslie, your team, you mentioned Taylor and Mary, but also and all of Nancy's work, but just thank you because that's really the leadership in terms of the work. We've talked about this for a long time, but it's really boots on the ground and how do we make it work and pushing and phone calls. And so thank you so much for that work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Barb?
I just have some questions, if it's okay. The teachers are then, they're not Penfield teachers? Okay. That's fine.
It's a good question, though, because we could, but then it becomes, we can't do that for the allotment we have from the state for universal
Got
pre-K.
it.
That would
Okay.
that would be
Okay.
an additional cost.
Okay.
And as we look at this, I see it too as a bit of a pilot. It's the first time we've
Right,
done it. We'll
right.
see how
Right.
things go.
But you know how I am about dates and calendars. Okay, so December 1st in New York State is the cutoff for starting school. So there is the possibility then that if you're a December 9th birthday, like my daughter was a December 9th birthday, she would be eligible for the UPK.
Well, it would depend on which year,
Well,
so.
right, okay, so here's my question. Is you turning 4, is it only from January 1st of that year until December 1st?
So on December 1st, she would be 3. So she would not be eligible for UPK.
Well, no, if she turns 4,
So if she turns 4 on December 1st she would be.
But not on the 9th.
If she turns 4 on the 9th, she would do it the next year.
well, right, but,
And then the next year, she would be 5 on December 1st, so she could go to kindergarten.
oh, right. But here's my question, and again, I apologize for this. If she's, all those December
Yep.
people are eligible for the, say, next year. But also then you've got those October, so that yeah.
As long as you turn 4 before December 1st of this year, you're eligible to go to pre-K in September.
But you're gonna have some older 4-year-olds along with those younger, there could be some starting at 3. If,
Yes,
yes,
as long as they turn 4.
because they turn 4
Yes,
before
yes,
December 1st.
Yes. If their birthday is,
Okay.
So,
Yes.
yeah, it's
Just like
it's the
kindergarten.
same for
Yes.
kindergarten.
It's
Yep.
the same for kindergarten.
Okay, just checking. It's the same thing for Veterans Day.
Depends if it falls on a Saturday or
Right,
a Sunday.
right.
Oh, all right. But I think that's a good question. All of them are good questions, and please don't hesitate to reach out to Dr. Maloney and her and the folks working on this to answer questions, because there'll be lots, I'm sure. So it's cool.
All right, board
It'd be
members?
the math. If I turn 4 by Veterans
Right.
Day of 2024.
And if you have a calendar question, call Bart, right?
Yeah, right, there you go.
Whether she's retired or not.
That's
All right, believe it or not, that concludes superintendent reports.
Thank you,
It's gonna get
thank you, Dr. Maloney, thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Okay, that's the end of that slide, so it's back to my thing. Where are we? Okay, we are on
7A.
7A, thank you, which is the resolution, oh, thank you so much. The resolution for the product standardization, Dr. Driffel mentioned about, this is for the small HVAC units, correct? Univacs, yes. So it's, as he said, it's up to us to approve that resolution. So this is the motion, be it resolved as follows, and you've got the full motion in front of you, and it's available in the board docs. I'm going to read the be it resolved. It is hereby determined that for reasons of economy and efficiency, including but not limited to, the district already has such equipment installed throughout the district buildings, and standardization would reduce training, operation, maintenance, and service costs, that all vertical unit ventilators shall be purchased through Change Air. This resolution shall take effect immediately, and the district's administration is hereby directed to make sure that the specifications for competitive bids for vertical unit ventilators are consistent with this resolution. So may I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
No.
We're
No.
aye
Aye.
and aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a roll call vote, isn't it? Yes.
Barbara Barbiars,
Aye.
Emily Belser,
Aye.
Lisa Benatti Chidsey,
Aye.
Catherine Dean,
Aye.
Mark Elledge,
Aye.
Kristen Harley.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you. All right. And this one, make sure I'm on the right one. This is the approval for federal funds. This is the Bay Trail HVAC that again, Dr. Driffel mentioned earlier as well. And this is this a roll call vote?
No.
No, okay. So, be it resolved by the Board of Education as follows. The proposed project does not exceed thresholds established under 6 NYCRR, Part 617, State Environmental Quality Review Act, which is we call SECRA. The board hereby determines the proposed project as a Type 2 action in accordance with the SECRA regulations. No further review of the proposed project is required under SECRA. The proposed project to be funded entirely by ESSER, ESSER, and/or GEER, GEER, allocated funds at a maximum cost not to exceed $663,547 is hereby approved, and this resolution shall be effective immediately. So may I have a motion and a second?
So so moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. We have change orders, and you have the change orders presented to you on the board docs. The above change orders have been reviewed by and are supported by architect Vic Tomaselli, project manager Gary Huffman, clerk of the works George English, and assistant superintendent for business and finance Dr. Daniel Driffel. We have a motion and a second that the change orders be described above be approved.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of the tax levy limit, which, again, the full resolution is above, but be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District hereby approves a submission of the tax levy limit of $69,334,282 as calculated in accordance with the guidance as set forth by the State Comptroller, the Commissioner of Education, and the Commissioner of Taxation and Finance. This tax levy limit represents an increase of 3.64%. So we have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution to award universal pre-K contracts, which Dr. Maloney has presented just a moment ago. Be it resolved that the board approves, Be it resolved that the board approves the award of the contract for universal pre-K program services pursuant to the RFP issued on November 22nd, 2021, and that the proposed terms of the contract attached to the RFP are hereby approved, and the superintendent of schools is authorized and directed to execute the same on behalf of the school district and to take all steps necessary to carry out the terms of such agreement. So may I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's see, the calendar. Okay. We saw the calendar presented earlier. So may I have a motion and a second that the board approves the 2022-2023 calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Textbook approval. That is recommended that the Board of Education approves the recommended textbooks as presented on January 25th, 2022. So may I have a motion and a second that the listed textbooks be approved?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Policies for second reading and approval. 7611, Children with Disabilities. 7614, Preschool Special Education Program. Have we received any additional feedback?
No additional comment on these, and just although you passed it, no community feedback from textbooks as well.
Oh, okay.
So may I have a motion and a second that the above policies be approved as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Visitor speaking time. We as a board appreciate the comments of the community during the public session of the board meeting. Every individual that speaks has a vested interest in the education of our students. Your comments are important to us. Matters involving particular individuals or specifics of negotiation are not permitted during public session. Concerns raised will be referred to the district administration for follow-up and action where appropriate. Visitors may sign up to speak by emailing the district clerk, Sharon Erkfitz, with their name, address, phone number, and topic which they wish to address. Registration is open from 8 a.m. on Friday before the meeting and remain open until 3 p.m. on the Tuesday of the board meeting. Speakers are expected to identify themselves with their name and address before presenting and limit their comments to 3 minutes or less. A total of 30 minutes will be allotted for visitor speaking time. The board will not be responding to comments during this session, but please be assured we are listening. Finally, we ask that all speakers to model the conduct we expect from our students in school daily. Please be respectful of others in your words, conduct, and demeanor. And we do not have any speakers today. And we have our committee meetings. So the steering committee meeting.
Yes. I was there.
Thank you.
It was my first one, and the executive director's report, which is also posted on the Monroe County School Board website, that we were going to be having the legislative breakfast on February 5th, which happened this last Saturday, and Sherry just shared about all the protocols that were in place to make everyone comfortable. At the meeting, the steering meeting, she said that at that point there were 85 to 90 people, and I believe she said that there was well over 100 for the meeting, and I know that we'll be reporting on that. The financials from the treasurer report. Whoops, where did you go? Come back here. Everything's solvent. So information exchange shared their information. I talked about the labor relations, legislative was presented, and then we went Act for Education, that there was a roundtable with Rock to Change and Ren, and there's all the videos are on the ACT website. Future topics are budget and access and equity. We then went into executive session and came out of executive session at 12:50, and that was the end.
Thank you, Barb. I was traveling and not able to attend, so I'm glad you were able to represent the district. You did mention the information exchange. Catherine, Dean, and I are both members of the legislative committee, but Kathleen, seeing that the information exchange committee or group has, we don't have representation there, she's volunteered to switch over and fill that empty seat. So thank you for doing that, so we can be represented in all of the Monroe County School Board Association
I've been really
committees.
lonely at those meetings, so
Oh, you
thank
go
you.
there
Oh, well, yeah.
Save me a seat.
I will.
We go there tomorrow then.
That's great.
Yep.
Legislative committee, so let me just get to that page here. Where did it go? Um, And as Barb mentioned, the legislative committee was mainly talking about preparation for the legislative breakfast, but we also did talk about the trip to Albany. It turns out that the legislative building in Albany is still closed to visitors. We don't know if that will change by the time we are scheduled to go, so reluctantly, we've decided to cancel that trip. It'll be, I think, the third year we've canceled it because of COVID, and it is unfortunate, but we've been working around it to still have contact with our representatives, which does bring us to legislative breakfast. This is an annual breakfast meeting with our representatives. We were represented by Kristen Hurley, Emily Belcher, Barb Babiarts, and myself. So we were well represented, which we were part of over 100 board members that attended. We had representation from 6 New York State Assembly members or their staff, 4 New York State Senate members or their staff, including Jen Lunsford was there, and Summer Brook was there by Zoom. She had 2 of her staff to set that up. Joe Morelli was there, and then representatives from Gillibrand and Schumer were there, as was Adam Bello and Malik Evans. So we had good representation for federal, state, and local as well. The topics, and this is the time to really sit down with them face by face. Part of what the legislative committee does is really get the questions lined up with our talking points, the things we want to, lay out the context, get the questions, have a discussion. So it is not just a chit chat. It is really structured dialogue with the representatives, so they understand what is important to our constituents. And one of the big ones, which Dr. Putnam mentioned earlier, which is key indicators that would allow us to move to post-pandemic environment. We want them to help get those defined in conjunction with the governor. We want them to make it clear so we don't have ambiguity. But the recognition is, how can we get back to a normal, a new normal? I hate to say the term, but a normal environment, post-pandemic environment. And so we have that. And again, they can't make any commitment says this is what it'll be, but they understand what our needs are, and not just coming up with indicators, but how they do it, how they roll it out, how that impacts us. Of course, we talked about a big topic, as always, is transportation with the bus driver shortage. There were some concerns because part of this waiver for the under the hood CDL required the states to apply for a waiver, and I think up until just prior to the breakfast, New York State, it was kind of questionable if they were going to actually apply for that waiver, which is, why wouldn't you? But they did apply for that waiver, so we had that, and these are 90-day waivers that can be renewed. We did talk about providing better access to CDL tests because, as you go down to Pennsylvania to get the test. So how can we get better access to testing locally, either through the state or allowing the state to essentially certify third-party testers? If they can't do it themselves, can we get third parties in to do it for us? So again, it's access, not just reducing the unnecessary parts of the test, but it's also improving access to the tests so we can get there. Now, and I wish I had known about this whole other part about the curriculum and what you got to go to the federals and the states. Because I would have the opportunity to sit down with Joe Morelli and talk about this stuff, so maybe we'll follow up with that. Of course, BOCES, some of the BOCES aid abilities, there's been salary limits that have been unchanged in terms of aid ability for many, many years. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped off. There's also the zero emissions, the buses. We know that the governor wants to make it so we can only buy zero emission buses, which at this day, and it doesn't have to be electric buses, but that's kind of the prevailing candidate, but basically zero emission buses by 2027, and we have to have them all replaced, or basically all the internal combustion engines replaced by 2035. So we support this, and we've had conversations at the board meeting how we would like to go electrified, but at the same time, if the whole state is, or the nation is there a capacity issue for manufacturers to allow us to provide the buses that allow us to meet these purchasing goals? So we just wanted them to know it's not that we object to it, it's just that they need to understand that it just may not be possible. And I think as it gets closer, that's 5 years out, as it gets closer, we'll know where we stand with that, and they'll adjust. But we just wanted to point that out. Also,
Mike Gallo's team can actually build those electric buses.
all right.
So you know.
Yes. Yeah. And then we talked about funding for the infrastructure, because, you know, we're going from, if it's electric buses, we've got to put all that electrical infrastructure in. That costs money. I think we're in a fortunate place because we're about ready to build a new bus garage, so we can design that, keep the capacity in, but that extra hardware still costs money. That was not part of our capital project. So that's, we can put the space in, we can put the channels in for wires and places to put transformers and all those kind, and charging hookups, but buying that stuff and actually installing it is money that was not part of our capital project. So how, and you know, when Joe Morelli, he said, yeah, they think they understand that, and that they're looking to help find ways to provide funding for that, because it's not just us, it's everybody. It's a huge infrastructure change, and, you know, that's why there's a time to do it, but we're actually very fortunate in our timing with our bus garage. And then another important conversation was funding to help aid support for students, because when we talk about we don't know what the impact is when the eviction moratorium is gone and how that affects people's stability in home. Again, students that actually are, maybe they might be evicted and they have to stay with family or friends that are then actually outside the district. They're still our students, so we have to manage being able to support those students. Plus, it's very traumatic. So how can we additionally support them with mental health needs, as well as all our other students that are struggling, where we can give them additional academic resources and mental health needs. With all that's gone on in the past couple of years, you know, it's just, we talk about our counselors doing great work and those teams, but there's just still a need for that, and that need keeps increasing. And I'd say the last one I'll just address is, you know, just how can they help us in addressing the harmful effects of social media. You know, it's a very sticky subject about First Amendment rights and what you can put on there and all those kinds of things. But we do know that they're it can be harmful to our students as well as our adults. And what can we do to mitigate that or to address it? So that was kind of the rundown, and I would just like to open it up to the other attendees. If you have anything you would like to add, what your thoughts were, because for Barb, you've been to this before, but for Emily and Kristen, these were your first ones.
I thought it was nice. There was a great turnout. I liked just the opportunity to talk to, you know, the legislators and hear their feedback. And I mean, again, you know, we were just able to advocate for the district, and we're really all students, not just our district, but, you know, across the county. So it was just nice. I mean, for my first one, and for it to be that big, it was great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the biggest thing I took away from it was just the partnership and that opportunity to really partner with our public officials, but not even just with them, but with school boards throughout the county, just to kind of get a pulse of what's occurring in their district and really connect with other school board members in that way, and superintendents.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Hopefully, next year when we go to Albany, we'll get you to join us. So let's see, that covers the committee meetings, the Monroe County committee meetings. There was the DEI core committee meeting. Do either of you have any comments on that?
So we had two. We had one earlier in the month with Ainsley Jemison, who met with our group because we were looking at, because we had students last year come to the board proposing a change in Indian Landing. And I will say the biggest thing I think I walked away from that was recognizing that it is a complete process and it's going to take time, but making sure as a board that we don't cause more harm than good in this change, and really being sensitive to making sure we have all stakeholders present at the table. He was amazing to listen to. He's a really powerful speaker, and it was really interesting to hear him speak. Do you want to add to that before we talk about the other one?
I think it was just a learning piece, just talking and hearing a little bit about the history and, being able to have him, I don't know if I can say this, like come and actually speak to other groups just to kind of inform them of, the history and all that we're doing to like really find out, the information before we make a decision. So I think it was great. I say great a lot, but it was good.
It was good. It was great.
I say great.
And then Monday, we also met, and it was the full DEI team. And there, it was led by clearly Tasha and Dr. Putnam. But first of all, Tasha created this most amazing resource, which I downloaded. I told her I downloaded it so I could steal it from my own classroom. But it was just a wealth of knowledge. And I just love that you are just putting things in people's hands and you're making it very easy to support teachers moving forward. And then as a team, we picked a component of the culture and we broke out into our rooms and we talked about, my group did music, but just talking about what could we do and how could we implement that this month as looking at Black History Month. And I said to Tasha today, I'm like, I've already got a plan for my own classroom because of the resource she created. So I'm a little jealous of Penfield teachers because I feel like you've really given them a lot. So grateful for my kids, but as a teacher myself, I think that's awesome that you're doing that for the staff here. So you're really putting things in their hands that they can use.
And then we were also able to hear from the principals as they updated us on their progress and how things are going in their buildings. So it was nice to hear that too, and to see that things are moving along.
Good, thank you. Next is the BOCES board candidates. The following, and again, we're a member of BOCES along with a number of other districts on the east side. The following BOCES board members' terms end as of June 30th, 2022. Margaret Burns, who's a resident of West Arundecoit Central School District. D. Brian Buttram, a resident of the Rush Henrietta Central School District. Kim McCluskey, a resident of the Pittsford School District. And Laura Whitcomb, a resident of the East Rochester Union Free School District. BOCES board members are elected by their component boards and voted on the same day designated for the vote on a tentative administrative budget. This year, the BOCES administrative budget vote is April 26, 2022, and will occur at a special Board of Education meeting. So, any questions or comments on that? So set that day aside so we can have that vote. And then Board of Education workshop will be, Board of Education will be holding a workshop at 6 p.m. on Thursday, February 10th. And this will be a Zoom meeting.
I think one of those, and we'll look through this, is the board look to have a workshop on that day in person in terms of really the focus being the board goals, the own board goals. And so we'll, in speaking with the board, looking to shift that to a Zoom meeting. Those meetings that are really just focused on board goals, strategic goals for the board are closed meetings. They're not open meetings, which is why the board could hold it on Zoom. And so really looking at that, more information will come out. We'll update that because we put it out that it would be an open meeting in the library, but the board's looking to shift it again, really around the strategic plan for the board itself, not for the district. So we can update that. I'll talk to Sharon tomorrow and we'll get that updated on our calendar.
Thank you. So let's see. So now, which brings us to a discussion on the real property tax exemption resolution. So I'll read the resolution, then we get a motion and second, and then if there is a motion and a second, we can discuss it or vote on it. Again, just not making any assumptions, but that's That is the process. So this is the sorry, 1 second. This is a resolution to adopt the volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers from real property taxation under real property tax law, section 466-K. Whereas 466-K of the real property tax law authorizes New York State school districts to permit an exemption from real property tax for certain individuals after a public hearing, which is the volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers exemption, and whereas the Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District has held a public hearing on February 8th, 2022 at the Penfield High School, 25 High School Drive, Penfield, New York, on the volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers exemption, and now therefore the Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District resolves as follows. Section 1. The real property volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers exemption made available pursuant to the provisions of Section 466K of the real property tax law of the State of New York shall apply qualifying individuals as follows. Apply to qualifying individuals as follows. A, 2 years of service for the purpose of Penfield Central School District real property taxes. Qualifying residential real property shall receive an exemption of 10% of the assessed value of such property upon proof of the following. Applicant timely files an appropriate exemption application with the applicable town assessor, and the applicant is an enrolled member of an incorporated volunteer fire company, fire department, or incorporated voluntary ambulance service residing in Monroe County, and applicant resides in the city, town, or village which is served by the incorporated volunteer fire company, fire department, or incorporated voluntary ambulance service, and the property is the primary residence of the applicant, and the property is used exclusively for residential purposes, or a portion of the property is used for the applicant's residence as outlined in the statute, and applicant obtains a certification from the incorporated volunteer fire company, fire department, or incorporated voluntary ambulance service stating that he or she is an enrolled member for at least 2 years, or option B, 20 years of service. For the purpose of the Penfield Central School District real property taxes, qualifying residential real property shall receive an exemption of 10% of the assessed value for such property for the life of the applicant upon proof of the following. Applicant timely files the appropriate exemption application with the applicable town assessor, and applicant is an enrolled member of an incorporated volunteer fire company, fire department, or incorporated voluntary ambulance service, and the applicant obtains a certification from the incorporated volunteer fire company, fire department, or incorporated voluntary fire service, voluntary ambulance service, stating that he or she is an enrolled member for at least 20 years of active service, and the applicant's primary residence is located within Monroe County. Section 2. The school business official is hereby authorized and directed to transmit a copy of this resolution to all town assessors within the Penfield Central School District and to the Monroe County Department of Real Property Tax. In Section 3, the school business official is directed to prepare a procedure for certification pursuant to real property tax law, Section 466K, and in a form approved by legal counsel. And Section 4, the resolution shall take effect immediately for the 2022-23 school tax year. So, and this is a roll call, but may I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this from the board? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Barbara Babiars,
Aye.
Emily Belser,
Aye.
Lisa Bonati Chizzi,
Aye.
Catherine Dean,
Aye.
Mark Elledge,
Aye.
and Kristen Harley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And with that, I guess, is there any other new business? With that, may I have a motion and a second that the meeting be adjourned at 9 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion adjourned, meeting adjourned.